Matt McCoy back with you. Producer Campy alongside. No Stan today. He's enjoying a family day with his kids during spring break. I will be doing the same tomorrow. Stan will be back and working with Campy to take you through the Friday show. Very special guest joining us right now as we hit the 4 o'clock hour. The head coach of the basketball Buckeyes, Chris Holtmann. Coach Holtmann, thanks so much for taking a few minutes. Have you decompressed from the season as of yet?
Well, great to be with you, Matt, and it's great to be on with you. You know, the interesting thing, Matt, that has happened here, really more so in probably the last 5 years I've been a head coach, is the stress level certainly gets decreased from an optimal of about 10 in March to you have less stress, but you're actually busier when the season gets over with. You're traveling more, recruiting fifth-year transfers, recruiting, classes in the 19 and 20. So you actually become a lot busier in terms of travel when the season gets over with, and that's the phase we're in right now.
I have to ask you, in terms of the tournament right now, and I have had different people, different coaches tell me different things. Is it hard for you to watch the tournament once you're out of it? Or just as a basketball fan, you enjoy watching the NCAA tournament is great. I can tell you from a fan perspective, I always, every year when Ohio State gets knocked out, I go through like a 24 to 48 hour mourning period where I can't – because they're out, I can't watch the tournament, and then eventually I get back into it. How are you? Do you watch the games?
You know what that means, Matt? That means you care. That means that you really care about the Buckeyes and the success of whoever you're following. Yeah, that's true of coaches. It's one of those things where you kind of can't take your eyes away from it, despite the pain that you feel while you're watching it. I do think most coaches do go through, just like you, a bit of a mourning period when you lose, where you just can't watch. You'd rather go recruit or rather focus on something else outside of watching another team play. That typically ends after a little bit, and it's still painful to watch, but it's hard to avert your eyes from something you're so accustomed to following and watching. And it's such a fantastic tournament that the reality is there's a part of you that just enjoys the drama that we think is the best sporting event out there. Okay,
the other thing that I'm struggling with is I always root for the Big Ten, unless, of course, they're playing Ohio State. And here we have Michigan in the Final Four. Great job. Happy for John Beilein. Now I'm at the point where, okay, it's Michigan. I don't know whether to root for them to keep winning or not. You're in this league. Do you root for the Big Ten? I mean, you got Penn State making the NIT Final Four. Do you root for the league to do well?
You do, just because I think, I felt like that when I was in the Big East. I get, let's put it politically correct. There are some people that are harder to root for than others,
yes.
Or not necessarily people. Some schools,
correct.
So we'll leave it at that. But yeah, I mean, listen. The reality is that school up north has put together a fantastic season, and John is a fantastic coach, and we felt like all along that they were a team. I said as we were traveling out to the Big Ten tournament, I said I felt like that school could get to a Final Four because of how they were playing and because of their talented pieces and their veteran group, and they've certainly done that. But yeah, the reality is, you always want your league to be successful in the postseason, and our league has done some good things.
Visiting with Chris Holtmann, head coach of the basketball Buckeyes here on Sports Radio 105.7 The Zone. I want to ask you, I mean, you had the announcement this week with Kada declaring for the NBA. You obviously know that you say goodbye to Jayshawn Tate. You say goodbye to Andrew Dockett. You say goodbye to Cam Williams. Interesting, Cam was playing so well. I imagine you always like your seniors to be playing their best at the end of their career. Certainly he did that down the stretch of the season. Forgetting about the production of those guys that you got, and there was a lot of it. From a leadership standpoint and a veteran standpoint, how significant is this class of guys that you're losing?
As significant as any in my coaching career. I think I don't know that I've ever went through where you have losses of certainly have lost a lot of guys, but when you compile the scoring, the impact on the floor, the leadership, the intangibles, it's a very significant group in terms of their contribution. And, people will probably look at our team and say, hey, Ohio State lost more than anybody in the Big Ten. And there's probably some truth to that. I think what you hope is that the guys behind them were able to observe the kind of leadership that they saw and can emulate that in their own way. And then obviously these guys and our incoming players have to continue to raise their level and be ready to step up and step into new roles. But those are never things that are guaranteed. Leadership is not, you don't come by it through osmosis. It doesn't just automatically get transferred down once you become a year older. That's something that has to be earned and displayed on a day-to-day basis. And right now we're trying to evaluate who that group is going to be.
Visiting with Chris Holtmann, head coach of the basketball Buckeyes. From Cada's perspective, and we saw what he did, player of the year, second-team All-American. He was phenomenal, and we saw it on the court. Was there any moments, I don't know, early on in practice where you started saying, man, this guy, I knew he was good, but this guy's better than I thought? Whether it was during camp or maybe it did take during the game, when did you realize that, wow, this guy's really special?
Yeah, Matt, I tell you, the first month of the practice season, he was doing some things and consistently doing things in practice where I think we felt like, boy, this guy's got a chance to be really good. And you never know it because we hadn't coached him in the game yet. But I think his work over that first month kind of showed us that he had the talent and the ability to be a very good player in the Big Ten. And we felt like that when we were coaching him. Hey, this is one of the most talented guys we've had a chance to coach. And, then he proved it over and over. I think the actual moment in game action was probably the Michigan State game when I felt like he was the best player on the floor.
Yeah, and he was playing against some really, really good players that day. But I agree with you. I mean, that was the game where, for me, I was like, man, he was the best player on the floor, on a floor that included Jaren Jackson and Miles Bridges. But he was the best player that day.
He was. Yeah, there's no question he was. And I think his consistency, the consistency of his play, which is kind of, I think, what all the NBA personnel were waiting to see. Can he do it over and over and over and over again? Because that's the sign of a really good player. And I think after we got through 3/4 of the Big Ten play and they saw it, I think that's when it validated in everybody's mind that he probably wasn't going to be here beyond this junior year.
Visiting with Buckeye basketball coach Chris Holtmann. Coach, I'm a Buckeye fan, and just like a lot of other fans, we're so used to winning and at the same time have such an innate ability to overlook how special something is, even though you don't reach, I don't know, as big a goal as you might think. I know this sounds weird. What I'm asking is, as this season started, the prediction for Ohio State was to finish 11th in the Big Ten. And you come in looking at this team. When did you and your coaching staff take an overall look and say, you know what, I think something really special is about to happen?
Well, I don't know if, I think each year what you're trying to do is assess your group and try to figure out how to reach your full potential. I think that's the greatest sign of coaching, and that can be an arbitrary thing at times, or it certainly can be a subjective thing in people's minds. But that's what you're trying to do, is maximize your group's potential. And And I feel like maybe as much as any year that I've been in coaching, this group really did some things where we were saying, hey, this is a group that is kind of firing on all cylinders right now. And I think after our Wisconsin on the road, Michigan at home, 2 Big Ten wins, I think at that point we felt like, wow, we've got some things here. This is a group right now that has great buy-in, has great leadership, is playing well. But you can't anticipate 9-0 start in the Big Ten. That's crazy. That's crazy thinking. That's I said it in the midst of it. I may never coach another year and the rest of my career and start out like it's unheard of. But we just we were fortunate. I think the schedule helped in some ways, and we had incredible leadership and really good play. But I think it was those 2 games where I thought that.
All right, so moving forward, and you mentioned earlier how busy you are right now recruiting, and you have 4 freshmen signed coming here next year. I know there's high expectations for them. The roster, though, as it consists with the guys that you have leaving, how many more guys you want to add for this year, whether it be grad transfers, whatever? In your mind, how many would you ideally like to add before next season begins?
Well, I tell you guys, I think that at least one in terms of an older guy that could step in and play. If you look at the balance of our classes, you see that we have one kind of recruited scholarship senior in C.J. Jackson, and then you have Joey Lane as well, who's been a walk-on for us that's been on scholarship. But our junior and senior classes are thin in numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to add at least one, potentially 2, but I think at least one in terms of a fifth-year guy that could come in and play an important role. And then our freshmen and our returning young guys in the freshman and sophomore class need to continue to grow as players.
Well, Coach, it was a lot of fun to watch this year. It really was. It was a joy to watch the style of play and these guys come together and do something very special. And we appreciate you taking a few minutes. And anytime you want to join us, phone is always open. We'd love to have you on as much as possible. We appreciate you taking a few minutes for us.
Great to be with you guys.